WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Welcome back, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, We Should Know is on the air. We're glad to be here today, and a subject that probably many of you have faced, dealt with, thought about, or at least encountered. We're talking about animals in Sampson County. Yes, I'm talking about four-legged animals. We're talking with two folks that know quite a bit about that. Sergeant Byrd with the Sampson County Sheriff's Department heads up the animal control unit there, and of course Anna Ellis, who is the director of the animal shelter here in Sampson County. I want to thank both of you for coming back. Both have been guests on this show before, and as we were talking off air a while ago, it seems that we need to do and have this conversation maybe more frequently, because it seems that we're seeing a lot more animals in our communities. And Jessica, one of the things that you do, I think, is educate people on not only the law, but how to deal with and treat animals. And I'm going to start with you. When we see things oftentimes in the news media where animals have attacked human beings, animals have attacked other animals, it kind of releases this sense of, well, this is dangerous. But at the end of the day, animals are sometimes our greatest true friends.
Yes. And so a lot of times when you see these incidents, you can kind of pinpoint what has happened. It can be a food aggression. It can be a brand new dog into the family that already had some maybe past behavioral problems, some concerns. A lot of times that's what me and Anna deal with when someone comes to the shelter and wants to adopt, say, an older dog. And we try to temperament test as best we can, see how if they've acclimated with other dogs, small animals like cats. We can't really, with children, it's so hard to do temperament tests. But so we try to tell owners, this is an observation period. It's a new animal in a new environment. Listen, watch the dog, see what's going on, and try to understand that it's a transition for them too. Mm-hmm. Yes, you're happy to get a new family member, but especially a rescued dog that you don't know the full history of, you kind of have to watch and make sure that everything kind of comes together peacefully and don't try to rush it.
You guys deal a lot with, and you alluded to this just now, is this whole psychology of the animal. Anna, as you do your job there at the animal shelter, do you find that people oftentimes bring animals maybe to the shelter because the psychology of that animal is not what they were anticipating, and so therefore they've got to get rid of the animal?
Absolutely. You've got some, they've had an animal for a long time, and then as you know, we get older, we get more temperamental at times. Mm-hmm. And then instead of trying to deal with the situation, they just pawn it off on the animal shelter. As far as like interacting with children, small babies, mm-hmm. They have a baby. They haven't acclimated the dog, haven't taken the proper precautions, the dog snaps. Okay, let's just get rid of the dog. Like I've always tried to stress, it's a lifelong commitment to an animal. So just like a baby, you have a baby, you're not going to get rid of it because 10 years from now, it's automatically started throwing
preteen,
temper tantrums. It takes consistency with an animal. You've got to make sure that, you bring in a new child, don't feed the animal around the child, don't allow the animal, your responsibility as a pet owner is to teach your children how to respect the animal as well. And it takes a lot. There are some instances where they do need to be taken out of the home, but not always. If you could just be more educated, try to acclimate, the animal with the person. If you bring in a new dog, you got family members over there, that the dog gets nervous around strangers. Crate it instead of, crate it while the visitors are there. Then you're cutting back on possibility of a bite.
Jessica, one of the things that you've voiced with us in the past is dealing with animals that seem to be out of control. Is there cases that where you have to intervene and ultimately knowing that animal is not going to be sustainable in a human environment?
We do, and a lot of the times, just an absolute animal that has just unrestrained aggression is uncommon. Typically what we get calls to is that animal that, and I've used it as an example before, I like my dog that barks and growls at strangers. And to that person, they may think that's beneficial, but that dog over time, when the owner doesn't correct it and the dog says, okay, this is a good thing that I'm doing. And then when it finally rises to the occasion of a bite, then the owner, oh, well, I've got to get rid of this dog because I can't have a biting dog. But you never tried to curb that behavior. A lot of times you'll see it, and I know probably everyone that's watching has seen it, when the little puppy, you play with it and it starts growling. And at that age, it's so cute, it's adorable. But then you continue to let that behavior, and an animal, just like with the crate training, that's a timeout. So you can have an animal play and, it's a game, but at some point you have to correct the animal. You have to let the animal know, okay, this is now unacceptable. So when we get the calls, it's because it's escalated to that point. Or we get the calls when the dog has no supervision. And a dog unsupervised, as we've said in the past, is like a child. They make their own decisions. They do on the whim of how they feel. So when the delivery man comes in the yard, they've been so used to biting and charging, or not biting, but growling and charging, that they finally nip the delivery man. Then we get the call because, hey, this dog is so aggressive, I couldn't even make the package delivery and I've been bitten. And the owner, I can't believe it, he's never bitten anybody before. Well, that's because the behavior has been allowed to escalate for so long. And then number two, as I've said so many times, you have to make sure your animal is confined when you're not supervising it. So that's when we run into those issues.
Or an unsocialized animal.
And that's common too. The dog has only ever known one person, and so somebody new comes to visit. Especially after COVID, we had a lot of bites where family members that hadn't been in a long time came to visit, and the dog bit them because it's just not been used to being around strangers. Even if it's family, they're not used to it, and their reaction was to, okay, I'm going to protect my property, and the only way I know to do that is a bite.
Let's talk about that for a minute. The whole pandemic era. What changed in animal behavior during the past 2 years in which folks were at home more? There was not a lot of socialization of human beings, much less animals. What have you seen? What kind of changes have you seen in animals and animal behavior during that pandemic?
Like Jessica was saying, the unsocialized. I mean, they weren't around people. Also, animals do go through separation anxiety. So for a year and a half, 2 years, you've been working from home, and then you have to go back to work, and then you come home and all your blinds are torn off your window. I mean, they do go through separation anxiety. That's something to think about as well. The main thing, like Jessica was stressing, is just you've got to socialize. But the pandemic, like I said, being at home more, I think, like Jessica said, with new, family coming over that they haven't seen for 2 years, the dog's just not acclimated, and that's their way of getting out. They bite. And the separation anxiety, we've had calls where, well, I've come home, my blinds are torn, my couch is chewed up. And that is a true thing in animals. They do go through separation anxiety.
So it's like acting out with a child.
Right.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So when I think about animal shelter, and I think about what the expectation is, and looking at a lot of the different things you do at the animal shelter, do you think folks understand the role of what you do, also with what you do, Jessica, in the sense of not only animal, we use that word control. I don't know whether you can really control all the animals or not, but the shelter itself has a specific role that you,
and a lot of times what we see is we're seen as kind of either a last resort or a fixer of the problem. So that same animal that has now got extreme anxiety, has become destructive, is going to get surrendered to the shelter. But there's a higher expectation, especially on the animal shelter. Hey, you need to rehabilitate that dog, get it to the point that it can be adopted. And sometimes, and unfortunately, we can't. We don't have the resources, the time when you're dealing with, like our shelter holds 71, we have 71 dog kennels. So at maximum capacity, we have 71 dogs. And if we have 10 cases that really need resocialization working with, it's not going to happen. So the public looks to us as, I can't take care of this animal. Here, you deal with it. Hey, this is a problem animal. Hey, you deal with it. But the end result, they want us to be the problem solvers. when a lot of times it can be addressed at home or through a certified dog trainer. Even advice and help from a licensed veterinarian could stop the animal from coming our way.
It's like she said, they'll bring us the problem animals, and then the shelter gets a bad name for having to euthanize. But not all, we can't do but so much. And as far as, we're having incoming animals constantly throughout the day. And the bottom line is we have to have the good adoptable dogs available. As far as the ones that show any aggression, we're just not, we can't.
And it would be a liability to try to.
It's a liability. But then on the backside of that, like Jessica said, they bring us the problem dogs, but then if we euthanize, then we're the bad guy. So it's no different
with the unwanted, the litters, the kittens, the puppies.
Right.
And a lot of times we can utilize rescues or adoptions when they're, I'd say, between the 8-week,
probably
14-week age. But what we're getting is when they've turned 6 months, have started destroying, bringing up trash, digging holes. Then they're, it was really cute and I loved it until that age. Now again,
or
you're the shelter. It's your obligation to find it a new home. I can't deal with it anymore. When, of course, and every time we've come, we've talked about the spay and neuter.
Right.
If they didn't have that litter in the beginning, it wouldn't be an overflow at the shelter.
You have a litter that you don't touch for 6 months. And then you bring us a 6-month-old puppy that's never been touched by a human, never socialized. And it's just not, it's not possible. We try our best, but it's not always possible.
When we come back, I want to pick up on that as it relates to the responsibilities of the animal shelter versus what the expectation is of the animal shelter, and kind of clear up some of those issues. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll kind of get into that a little bit deeper and kind of maybe give folks a phone number, that kind of thing they can call. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking with the director of the animal shelter, Anna Ellis. We're talking with Sergeant Jessica Byrd with the Sampson County Sheriff's Department, who looks after all of those animals out there. We'll be back.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
Welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. The show comes to you on Star Communications Channel 16 and 316. Also simulcast on WCLN Radio, and we also upload it to social media platforms when the show airs the first time on Tuesday. And today we're talking about animals. Yes, animals, four-legged animals. We're talking with Sergeant Jessica Byrd. We're also talking with Anna Ellis, director of the animal shelter here. We were talking before we went off air about some of the behavioral issues and those kinds of things. I want to kind of get into the expectations that folks have for both you guys, and particularly Anna, as people look at the animal shelter. Is the animal shelter a convenience? Is it something that we've got to have because there's no other resource? What is the typical capacity? And what do you think about folks? Should they call you? Is it something that it would work better for you if somebody would call you and say, I've got whatever kind of dog, unfortunately I got to get rid of them, when's a good time, that kind of thing? Or just show up? How does that work?
Well, first off, I think it is a convenience. I think it is necessary for counties to have an animal shelter and animal control, or otherwise we'd be overrun with just stray dogs. I would suggest calling first, and that number is 910-592-8493. That is for the shelter if you need to drop off. However, if you need an animal control officer to come, the phone number is 910-592-1151. As far as dropping off animals, we would like you to call. We can set up, we are open after 1 to 5, Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday for drop-offs. If you can call, it would be a lot better, because then we can get in contact with animal control to see what all they have to bring in that day. Like I said, they're bringing in constantly. We have a total of 20 incoming pens. Those pens, we've just implemented some new policies as far as incoming dogs will stay in those 20 pens to reduce, as you know, we had a parvo outbreak back in October, where we temporarily suspended intakes. That was to monitor the animals in our care, and it was to prevent incoming animals to be susceptible to parvo. So our vet, we've implemented where we have 20 pens, and once those 20 pens are filled, until we move some out, we don't have any room for incoming animals from the public or the officers. And like I said, that reason that it was implemented is because it allows us to monitor those animals for 72 hours to make sure there's no medical conditions before we move them up to the general population. That just controls the
spread
disease
of
spread.
a possible disease.
But as far as dropping off, we would, especially if you have, I mean, you'd be surprised. We've had people call and say, well, I have 15 cats I need to bring. But then we've got them bringing in multiple cats at a time. We've got probably, 20, 25 incoming pens for cats. So you think about 15 cats from one person. It's kind of hard for the public to understand. When they call, we may not be able to accept those animals right then, but we will try. And like I said, adopting out, rescues being able to pull, that makes a big difference. But I can't urge it enough. The public needs to understand we are trying, but it's a big county, the biggest in the state, obviously. Animal control is always full with calls, and we have a lot of people that's wanting to bring in animals. And this is where I stress spay and neuter. Spay and neuter is a big thing. And if you don't have your dog spay or neutered, when your female goes in heat, lock her up where a male cannot get to her. That makes a big difference. Unwanted litters is the number one reason why animal shelters are overrun. And a lot of people don't think about it, but if you put a dog if you have your female in heat, try to get her in a kennel or some way to prevent a male dog from being able to come in contact with her.
Is one of the reasons people don't spay and neuter more the cost issue, or is that something that's not that expensive? Oftentimes, especially with everything's going on in society now,
right?
$5-10 gets to be a big deal. So is that something that's
an issue? Can't say that it's an inexpensive procedure. It can be. It can be. It depends on the size of the animal.
Right.
If the females, like say if they try to get her spayed while she's in estrus, it costs a little bit more. To most, and I'll just be, in the past I've talked about understanding the financial obligation when you take on an animal.
Absolutely.
So whether it be a cat or dog, and we're talking just at this point small, not even delving into livestock, but that is an immediate upfront cost that you should factor in.
Yep.
I think most felines at about 2.5 pounds, and that's at the earliest, they could already be spayed or neutered when they get at least to 2 pounds. Again, that's very early, but feasibly you could get it that soon.
Right.
With a dog 5-6 months of age, you can go ahead and get it spayed or neutered. But again, if you wait until at this point the dog's had 3 or 4 litters, she's in heat, and you just said, okay, I'm at my wit's end, and then you call and she's in heat, it might run. And again, I hate to quote prices, but I mean, you're looking anywhere in the $200 range.
Probably.
For a larger dog if she's in heat, and probably a little bit more because you have to factor in if it's not vaccinated against rabies when you take it to get it spayed, that's an extra vaccine. If it has to be boarded for whatever reason, there's other vaccines that are required if it has to stay at the vet. So it's a little costly, but in the long run of that animal's life, and you're honestly having an unaltered animal, it's so worth it to go ahead and have that animal spayed or neutered. I get so many calls because I've got 5 stray dogs in my yard, and I get on scene. Okay, well, whose dog is this? This female in heat that all these male dogs are surrounded. Oh, well, that's my dog. Okay, well, you have to understand the state of North Carolina is not just a suggestion. requires and instructs you as a law that if your female is in heat, you must confine her in a manner that an animal, that she can't be bred. Unless, again, you're, say, a breeder or you know, you want the animal bred. But if you don't, you have to confine it. That's you as the owner's responsibility. We will obviously address as best we can to stray dogs, but I'll be honest with you, the best bait in the world, if you're trying to catch a stray dog male, is a female in heat. And that's when the problems start. Or, look, my dog, I've been missing my dog for 2 days. Okay, is he intact? Yes, he's still got all the equipment. Okay, start looking around in the neighborhood. If there's a female dog in heat, your dog might stay with her for up to 26 days. And a lot of times we see that. Their dog will come back home after about a week or so. It'll look like they haven't ate, disheveled, but they've been following a female dog in heat. And then again,
a lot of people don't realize the benefits from spay and neutering.
Not just behavior, but health-wise.
You know, you've got a male cat that's unaltered, spraying on your furniture. Most of the time, if he's neutered, he's not going to have that issue. You've got, when an older dog that's not has not been spayed, they get pyometria, the infection of the uterus. That's going to cost you a heck of a lot more to get taken care of versus getting them spayed when they're younger. A lot of times, neutering dogs, getting that testosterone out, calms them down a little bit. Then, like Jessica said, you don't have to worry about them running the neighborhood looking for a female dog in heat. It's just, there's so many benefits from spay and neutering, not only keeping the population down in the shelter, but just for yourself in your household. There's so many, benefits as far as you don't have to worry about the infection of the uterus like we talked about. You don't have to worry about your male cat spraying your furniture. The aggression issues. It's just, there's a lot more benefits than just unwanted litters.
Does the animal shelter, when an animal's brought in, if that animal hadn't been spayed or neutered and that animal comes in, do you guys, before it goes back out, take care of that? Is that something?
What we do is we offer a voucher that we use veterinary medical clinic. We give a voucher at time of adoption for ones that are not old enough. There is a policy in place if we have a full-blooded animal, German Shepherd, Pit Bull, Doberman, stuff like that, they will not be released until they're fixed. Now we've got, and then most of the time we set up the spay and neuter appointment at the time of adoption, and then Dr. Oglesby and them will let us know, okay, yes, this person came in, that dog's been taken care of.
So that's a plus in one way. When you move dogs forward from the animal shelter, they've pretty much gone through that rabies thing, that spay and neuter thing. All of that's kind of a clean slate. So it's a lot. The word free goes around in our society a lot. There's really nothing free. Somebody's paying for it. So at some point in time, somebody's paying for some of those procedures to happen.
Absolutely. The adoption fees, male dogs are $85. Females are $105. That includes all shots and the spay and neuter. Male cats are $70. Female cats are $90. Once again, that includes all shots and the spay and neuter. And then you would just be responsible for taking for the yearly checkup to the vet for their yearly rabies, flea and tick prevention, and their regular shots. But when you come and get an animal from the animal shelter, it's fully vetted. And then it's your responsibility to continue that.
And it's always, and again, the number 592-8493 to call even if you're looking for an animal, you want a pet, you could call that number, make an appointment, come in and see what's available,
and
or maybe
you
could tell people.
Facebook page, Sampson County Animal Shelter. We keep our adoptable animals posted up there.
Let's not forget Facebook, because that's where most people not only get their news, but they get their information from.
Absolutely.
It's Facebook or social media.
And it's easier if you have Facebook and you're missing a dog or an animal, to message us on Facebook, send a picture with it, we'll share it on our Facebook page.
When we come back from break, I'd like to kind of focus on a lot of those things that you deal with in the sense of the numbers of animals you got, what kind they are, so folks kind of get an idea of the expectation and the sense of what the animal shelter does in presenting that animal. And Jessica, kind of follow up from you, the kinds of animals you find yourself going out picking up more often. So kind of as a teaser coming back, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're talking about all things animals and the people that look after them. Hopefully you do, but when you don't, we're talking with the people that does. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Welcome back. We Should Know is on there. We're talking about animals today. We're talking with Sergeant Jessica Byrd. We're talking with Anna Ellis, Director of the Animal Shelter. Let's get back into that subject of the animals that you have at the shelter and the kinds of animals that you put forward, and give us some of those. Typically we think cats, dogs, and the numbers of those animals. Are we, as we sit here today, are you overwhelmed? Do you have promotions where you say, look, I've got on Facebook, for example, I've got this kind of animal, make a great pet and that kind of thing. And the reason I'm asking that, we see that a lot on network TV, especially some of the larger urban areas where they really promote it. It's almost like, come get these animals.
Right.
And to follow that, I want both of you to think about this, to follow that discussion in this segment, what is the result of that if people are not prepared and they get that animal? Is there a recidivism rate in which all of a sudden you see that same animal come back?
Well, first off, we were talking about numbers. 2021, we had 1,700 animals, a total of 1,700 animals brought in. And as far as promoting on Facebook, we do our best to get them loaded up there on Facebook. We try to provide videos. We do videos with our shelter dog, Mitzi. We see how socialized they are. Mm-hmm. We also have quite a few reputable rescues that we use that can come in when we get full, that can take, they don't always take adoptable dogs. They'll take injured dogs, sick dogs, to try to help us cut down on our euthanasia rate, which in a year's time has dropped 3%. So we're obviously doing something right, working together with the officers, with the public, and with rescues. There are instances where we have some brought in back once adopted, like we had one about 2 months ago brought back. Curly was just way too hyper. From what I was told when they brought it back, they said that he jumped on their kitchen table multiple times. And that's something that, once again, you got to correct. And so we've had some brought back, but not a huge amount. We do ask that if you have to bring an animal back, that you bring it back to us. So then we can, instead of giving it away or taking it to another animal shelter, bring it to us so that we can try to rehome it once again. But yes, we use Facebook is our biggest thing, and then we do have the public come in Monday through Friday, 1 to 5. We do have quite a bit of foot traffic coming in. You do see that some are looking for specific dogs. A majority of the animals in the animal shelter are going to be mixes. But however, we do, like I said, we were talking about a Doberman here earlier. We had one brought in yesterday, full-blooded Doberman. We do get full-blooded dogs brought in, but for the most part, they're going to be mixes. We see a lot of pit bulls. Typically, pit bulls are not spay and neutered, so you have a lot of more unwanted litters, and that's just, it's a society thing. It's all over. It's not just North Carolina. It's not just Sampson County. There's a lot of your backyard breeders for pit bulls. We have some that are accidental litters. Like you said, you don't lock up the female dog, it gets, the female or a male gets a hold of it, then we're going to have unwanted litters, and they could be anywhere from shepherd mixes, hound mixes, pit bull mixes. That's
pit
probably
bull Chihuahua mixes.
Yeah, pit bull Chihuahua mixes. We get a wide range of mixes, but they make some of the best dogs you'll ever have.
And health-wise, they're a lot.
Yeah.
A lot better off.
Just as I listen to y'all talk, it just strikes me is that do you get to a point, either one of you, that there's times that you just feel you're overwhelmed with the sheer numbers of animals?
You can be, but it's kind of more about explaining to the public that's calling, requesting the need for assistance. Look, this is the amount of space we have. I have to kind of schedule you out. So yes, I understand you might need X number of dogs picked up. If they're not an immediate threat, being overly aggressive, can you wait until next Wednesday? That gives us time to post the animals we've got, see if a rescue can come forward before we're having to push more in and overload the system.
Have we come to a place that you're seeing more animals in-house as opposed to, of course, I can think back years ago, animals were yard dogs. Now I'm seeing more and more people with animals that are in-house
I think it's
pets.
an even mix.
Yes, I think it's
So
even.
you don't think it's gone up any?
I think it's an even mix.
I don't think so.
So let's kind of explore that a little bit as far as the numbers of animals and trying to adjust that. What kind of challenge is it for you? Because typically you're out in the community and folks are calling you, Jessica, and saying, or you and some of your folks that work for you, it's like, come and get this animal now. Is that something that's easy to
So we
explain?
have to assess how the call comes in. Obviously, if it's an aggressive animal in attack mode, somebody can't come out of their house, we prioritize that. If it's a roaming stray, we obviously much less priority, but we're still going to address the issue. But I mean, we deal with it all: chickens, cows, dogs, cats, horses. I mean, anything and everything in this county we deal with, but we do it on a priority basis. Obviously, endangering the public, endangering the welfare of another animal, being a dog aggressive, we prioritize that differently than just, I saw a stray dog 2 days ago, I want you to set a trap.
You talked about, and you used the term backyard breeders. Do we have a lot of those? And you kind of explain that term.
Backyard breeding, basically, you got your male and your female back there, and
they're making money.
They're making babies. They're
$50 off a pup.
And they may or may not have, quote, AKC registrations, but
they don't typically.
But they look full-blooded, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. There's a lot of that. And Jessica and them see that a lot.
That's a lot of cruelty cases we get because they have the animals, but they're not keeping them humanely, and somebody in the community calls us and we follow up.
And that is one thing that I know Jessica and I would stress. If you see something that doesn't look right, report it. And because they're going to go out there and investigate. And if there's nothing there, then okay. But that's one of the big things, because if the public would just report it, it would help the animals tremendously, because then they wouldn't be in such bad shape once we get them, once it is reported. It is important to report, just like child abuse. You would report child abuse.
Absolutely.
Animal abuse should be reported as well.
You mentioned a while ago rabies. I want to circle back to that a bit. Do we have an issue at times with rabies in the sense that folks, if you looked at the whole population, I know analytically it's impossible to tell, but if you look at the population of animals we got, are we in good shape as a result of folks having animals with rabies shot? Or do they just typically wait till the dog starts having trouble and then all of a sudden they realize they got rabies?
Yeah, we have always had issues with folks getting their rabies vaccinations and keeping them current on their animals.
And I don't know if it's a misconception that it's an expensive vaccine, but it's not. I mean, you can go to any vet in Sampson County and say, I just want a rabies shot.
Yeah.
And it's probably, what, $9, $12?
Yep.
And half of the time, the vet's like, I'm only certified to give a 1-year vaccine.
But they
vets
offer
are
3.
required 3. So you're looking at $9 to $12 every 3 years, and that'll protect you, your family, your animals, because if they come in contact with a rabid raccoon, then we've got to deal with that dog having possible rabies.
And for folks in the country, that seems to be even more.
Yeah, it's a much more prevalent for out in the country setting for an animal to encounter a possibly rabid. But I'm not going to deter that it doesn't happen in the city, because you have a lot of city areas where wildlife congregates as well, especially dumpsters, areas where there's food discarded. You're going to see a conglomerate of wildlife taking advantage of that opportunity.
A law question. Is there a leash law that exists for Sampson County?
So we have it's complaint based. So if it is determined your dog is being a nuisance to the community, we can go and explain to you at this point, yes, you have to confine your animal because it's becoming problematic. At nighttime, there's a state law. The state of North Carolina says you must keep your animal on your property at night. It cannot run at large.
And I think that's important, the property piece. And again, urban areas where you maybe have a half acre to an acre, but then in rural areas you may have 300
absolutely.
acres. So,
Yeah.
Right.
so it becomes paramount to saying, well, is that dog running loose?
Right.
Or is that dog got a confined area? And does that become really problematic for you at times?
A lot of times folks don't understand, if I live in the county, why can't my dog have the freedom and ability to roam? And you run into the problem when it's going so far, and I had a gentleman that he had right at 200 acres. You know where his dog found its favorite place to roam? right across from the end of that acreage. When it becomes a problem in Sampson County and we get a complaint, it's irrelevant if you've had dogs for 15 years, have never had a single complaint, they can do what they want. When we get that complaint, at that point you have to become the responsible pet owner, follow our county policy, and confine it so it can't become a nuisance to others.
Is the county policy, and I've actually got a copy here that I've been looking at, and that document is pretty specific with some amendments to it. Does it pretty much follow state statutes and state guidelines as it relates to what other counties do, or are there uniquenesses here?
We very closely followed Cumberland counties. However, in making some decisions, we kind of acclimated it to not only be sometimes more restrictive than the state law, especially with our dangerous dog declaration. If your animal's dangerous, the state law has certain requirements, but we decided to be a little bit more strict with that.
That's something I want to kind of have an opportunity to follow up on a bit is the law itself, because there is a engagement, I think, with animals that involves public health as well, and folks may not realize how that chain of events occurs. When we come back, I want to kind of follow up on that. And then I'd like to kind of touch on some of these more exotic things that you've heard people talk about, and that's always seems to get people's attention when you talk about animals in the realms of things that might slither on the ground rather than having four legs. So I want to kind of touch on that and allow both of you the opportunity to speak to that. So just stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on our last segment here with We Should Know, and we're talking a lot about things that are in your home that you think dearly of, and that's your pets and other kinds of animals that exist around you. Stay tuned. Call a friend. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We take a short moment here to thank you for sending us emails about programs you'd like to see, and we appreciate you sending those to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Also, the comments you send to Post Office Box 1482. That's We Should Know, Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. Your comments, your suggestions about shows we've had, shows you would like to see us bring on, and we certainly got some comments from folks from other counties, and appreciate those from Wake County and areas that people pick up the show, and we thank you for listening. So again, thank you for being with us today, and we're talking about animals today, literally in the sense of animals that you guys deal with regularly. I want to open this segment with Jessica for you to kind of bring us some awareness, because you see a lot of animals that are not necessarily cats, dogs, should I say four-legged creatures that maybe does not make it to the animal shelter. What are some of the more exotic kinds of things that you've seen over the past few years, and has that increased?
So I think we've been pretty fortunate that if there are a lot of exotics, and when I say exotics that are uncommon, small primates, larger reptiles, we have not had calls on those. So either somebody's being very responsible or they're being very secretive. We have had to, in the past, do a couple search warrants for residences that had large amounts of small reptiles, such as the little ball pythons, bearded dragons that were not being kept humanely. And folks have to understand, as much as I've harped on having funding for veterinary expense, feed expense for a domestic animal, exotics such as, and again, I hate to say exotics, especially if there's a viewer out there that has a bearded dragon, that's the best pet in the world to them. But it's kind of unusual as a pet for some other people. You know, they require a special diet, heating, different enclosures as that animal grows, costs that if you, and you know, and again, not knocking any type of reptile exhibit or show, but you know, you can go buy a $9 little baby iguana that's this big, can fit in a 5-gallon aquarium. That animal can grow to be, well, much longer, much taller than me.
Wow. And
ironically enough, this will be our 3rd year we have found an iguana that has been bound, that showed up at twice in the past, was on the roadway. Last year it was in the parking lot of East Park Cinema here in town. The most recent one had been tethered like that so long she actually lost all 4 of her lower limbs. We had to take that animal to Kernersville Reptile Rescue here in North Carolina.
How large do they get, the iguanas that they?
JW, I'll be honest with you, the length much longer than this table.
And you've had those right here.
Absolutely. Like I said, this is ironically our 3rd year that we have found at least a minimum 5-foot long iguana tethered, meaning somebody had actually restrained them by their hands so the animal couldn't
What's
freely
the
move about.
fascination with these animals? What is the sense if it feels like they needed some kind of exotic, something completely off the scale?
And I'll be honest with you, I didn't get into this profession because I don't love animals. I've had, you know, a pet iguana, a small green iguana, that I enjoyed observing this animal. I'm not going to say that they can be overly friendly like a dog or a cat, but they learn you learn them. I mean, there's a lot of benefits of it. Then there's, of course, the flip side. There's some folks that make profit. You know, they may breed, especially like the ball pythons. They're kind of easy to contain. It doesn't take a lot of space. And folks would pay, you know.
Now, when you say python, this is a reptile.
Yes,
snake.
Yeah, snake.
And how big do they get?
The ball pythons don't get as large as some of the other constrictors. And that's what they call them, ball pythons, because honestly, they're preferred, you know, they like to be curled up. We picked up one from a search warrant, and I don't know if Anna remembers, I had to have her put out a plea that we needed feeder mice for it, because that's just not something we accommodate for. They don't get overly large, but I mean, there are some reptiles that can get, I mean, easily 10 foot, not, and you know, we don't allow venomous snakes in Sampson County, but some of your constrictors, you know, they can get 10 foot long. So it just depends on what that person's, they could have a pet hair dander allergy. They can't actually have what we would say a typical dog or cat pet. They have to have a reptile. There's benefits to them. I mean, you know, these animals can be beautiful when you enjoy looking at them. Most of the audience, I'm sure, is going to say, I don't want anything to do with a snake.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, and we get calls all the time to remove them from residences. Not pets, but you know, typically a rat snake will find its way into a residence. We get called to remove them. Like I said, it's just every person's individually different as to what they might like to have. No different with the livestock. And I've seen a boom in livestock ownership. And I would stress and take the time to say, if you're going to consider owning livestock on a small acreage, which is what we are seeing more typically, you have to be prepared to clean up after that animal so that the odor doesn't bother those that surround you. Understand, you know, there's forage needs they have, that if you don't have the acreage, the graze pasture that they can graze on, you have to provide them with that forage. We're
talking here horses,
goats, cows,
llamas,
sheep, llamas. Oh yeah,
emus.
Now emus maybe not so much, but again, there's smells associated with keeping livestock that is so different from, you know, your cat, your dog. And that is what I'm seeing a lot, especially in the summer when it gets hot. I'm getting a lot of complaints of, hey, look, my neighbor has got about 10 goats over there, and I can't even walk outside because of the smell and the flies. So folks have to understand they have to keep those environments where they're keeping their animals in, and it's per our ordinance, in a clean and sanitary condition. I will quickly definitely address, it's warmer weather. Animals have got to have a relief from the heat of the sun. And that's regardless of being a dog, cat, horse, cow. They have to have some area where they can get relief from the sun via shade.
And that's important because we're getting into spring now, and as you know, all three of us have talked about, it's important to do this show periodically, especially as we go into different seasons of the year.
Yes, sir.
And heat is becoming, seems to be more and more prevalent in the location of that. The other thing that you mentioned, I think is important, there's a sense that, well, if you live in a rural area and you're in a county and it's, you don't have neighbors real close, you can kind of do what you want to do. But these ordinances that are set forth for the county is based on statute, and it's enforceable. It's legal stuff.
And what our ordinance did, and especially when I bring up the issue of the odor, it's not as restrictive on, you can't have this number of animal, you can't have this X amount, but you have to keep it in a manner that it doesn't bother your neighbor. So if we've lived beside each other for 10 years, never had any problems, and then I decide one day I'm going to get a small herd of goats. And I'll be honest, love them. They're an excellent pet companion animal to have.
Real good.
But now they produce an odor and they produce waste like you would not believe. And it wouldn't take long for my neighbor to say, oh, what is that? What is that? Why is the amount of flies doubled at my house? Why is the odor? And I have to be that responsible person. I have to, okay, how am I going to eliminate this waste?
Right.
I can't just say, oh, well, you know what, I'm in the country and she don't like the smell of it. She's got to deal with it. If she complains, especially comes to the sheriff's office and files a complaint, we're going to have to address it.
Anna, when you look at it and you talk about animals that Jessica's just talking about, is there a place that the animal shelter has if there's one of those that's found to be stray out there? What do you do with them? Is there a place at the animal shelter, or do you just stay with certain kinds of animals?
We just cats and dogs.
The shelter handles the very small, and they can sometimes house like the small birds, guinea pigs, hamsters. The sheriff's office is actually charged with the housing and caring of anything other out of that norm.
Well, and see that a lot of folks got to understand that comes with an expense to the county. An expense to the county then means that somebody's paying the bill.
Right.
So therefore, the citizens of the county is paying the bill. I'm trying to use this in my shows now to try to remind folks that when they see the word free, there's no somebody is paying for it. Am I right?
And I will say we have an excellent population of citizens that when we kind of, and I say a plea, but when we send a request out, hey, we've had to seize 4 horses that are absolutely starved, emaciated. If donations are welcome, our communities do come together and really assist, and it's fantastic in an agricultural community to see them come forward and help.
Absolutely.
We're coming up on our last minute and a half of the show. I want to give you a few seconds just for closure, and I'll start with you, Anna, and then I'll go to Jessica.
Yes, I want to stress that we love community support. Like I said, we did an Amazon Christmas wish list that was fulfilled where every animal in our care at Christmas time had a treat. We're having a lot more, look forward to some more public events. COVID has affected that. But once again, our community involvement means more than anyone could ever know. It makes a difference to me and my staff to see that we do have community support, and we just want to thank you for it.
Jessica?
And I will always, I try to follow up, if you have a complaint of animal cruelty and see an issue to be addressed, when you call, try to provide as much information as possible, location, what's occurring, and how long. That can help us as law enforcement officers investigate a report of animal cruelty.
And those numbers again is 8493-592-8493 for the animal shelter. And for Sergeant Byrd is 592-1151. for your office, and a lot of times things can be resolved there, but if not, always you're going to be involved. So thank you very much for being with us today. And we look forward to maybe an update periodically, because things are always changing in the world of animals. And if you invite somebody to your party and say, bring your animal, you might need to find out what kind of animal they got after listening to your comments, Jessica. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you each and every week right here on We Should Know, bringing you information, education about things that we should know more about. Stay tuned. We'll be back next week. May God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.